What was it again? It was like a. What was I gonna do? It was gonna be like a. Oh no.
Was
What
it
was
the
it?
room thing?
No, that was the versus one. This one's
It was
Shit.
Good go. We should really write these things down.
Yeah, we should, shouldn't we?
Fuck it, that's our intro.
That's the intro. That's what Warner Brothers was thinking when they were talking about doing their DC universe.
There you go.
So there we go.
Done a discussion.
If Ron and I were both commissioned, or one or the other, were commissioned by Warner Brothers to basically do our own DC universe, what would be the universe? How would it start? Who would be the big villain? Who would be Thanos essentially? And what would they be after perhaps? And what movies would we plan?
Right.
Right.
So do you want me to start off?
Go for it.
Okay, so for me, obviously, the idea, probably the same for you, is we disregard the current DCEU.
Yep.
Like, it does not exist.
Yep.
Complete reboot. That said, I did my best to take into consideration the fact that there's a couple of films out there already, like animation films, live action films, that already have a particular storyline, and that I felt like maybe we shouldn't
Disregard.
yeah.
Yep.
So maybe not redo the stories that they've done. So first off, I would probably start off as the DCU did with a Superman film.
Yep.
Which would be called The Man of Tomorrow, because I feel like that's more hopeful.
It's more classic.
It's a more classic,
Superman,
hopeful title that basically a really it already gives the impression of this is a light-hearted DC universe. It's not a dark one where we all want to make a film much like Dark Knight and completely fail.
Yeah.
So in that, basically, he fights, I don't know, Lex Luthor, keep it classic, just because you want to be introduced to a world you kind of already know. That's why also the second film, I'd introduce Batman, as in the Caped Crusader, which would be the title, and he would be, first, you would be fighting a small-time villain, probably something like Deadshot or something like that.
So to say Catman.
Maybe Catman, I don't know.
It's a real villain.
I think maybe Deadshot would be good, because I'll get into that later. I think it's pretty clear where I'm going with this. But the rest of the film, he would be mostly fighting Joker, because again, keep it classic. Then there would be a World's Finest film.
Yeah.
In which it's Lex Luthor and Joker, or not even Lex Luthor and Joker, maybe completely different villains. But anyway, working together against both Superman and Batman. And then at the end, just a surprise appearance of Wonder Woman.
Yep.
So up until this point, it's basically the same as the DCEU, but instead of going straight into a film where all three of them appear, still a Batman film first to introduce some more characters.
Yeah. So
then there's a Wonder Woman solo film. Then one with all three of them.
Yep.
Which would practically be the first, let's say, Justice League film.
Okay.
Essentially. Where they would fight Steppenwolf still, because I feel like the decision to have him as a villain for an entire film is not a bad decision, but I feel like to have the entire Justice League against him already in their full form,
it feels a bit
overkill.
Yeah.
Especially considering that if Superman wasn't dead at the beginning, then the whole film would have been solved in minutes.
Yeah.
So this could still be a slightly more interesting look at it, and then basically around the end of it, they get two revelations. One of them is that Steppenwolf isn't the end game; it's Darkseid.
Yeah.
But also, there's more, let's say, meta-humans out there that could potentially help them in a fight. So then we'll have three separate films, which is The Flash, Cyborg, and Aquaman. And each of those three will have one of those main three heroes accompanied with them. So, for instance, Flash would most likely be accompanied by Superman, Cyborg would be accompanied by Batman, and Aquaman would be accompanied by Wonder Woman. After that, there will be a Green Lantern film to kind of tie it all together. Or, this is the part where I wasn't sure, maybe have a Green Lantern Corps film before the second Justice League, or after it. Kind of in the fashion of because that would be kind of almost the same as Guardians of the Galaxy is to the Avengers, where it's The same universe, but not quite connected.
They're separate because they're intergalactic and Earthbound. Yeah.
So I wasn't quite sure about that, but in the second Justice League film, basically Darkseid already comes in and defeats the Justice League quite easily. And at the end of the film also captures Superman and holds him captive on Apocalypse. So then what I would call phase 3 would be kind of building up to potentially like the Justice League meeting the Guardians of the Galaxy. They'll have to fight Superman as well. So at that point Lex Luthor would be involved in it as well, and he would kind of first of all, like the aftermath of the second Justice League is Lex Luthor will get involved and will say, look, I have this idea that will definitely stop Doomsday. Sorry, would stop Superman. Fuck, I've already...
You kind of given it, yeah.
So, it will definitely stop Superman if the Justice League isn't up for it. It's called the Doomsday Project. Obviously, that will go wrong and Doomsday will kill a lot of people, but like, that will set up. And Amanda Waller at the other side of the room is like, no, I disagree with you, because I feel like that would be like a plan Z. Almost like
that is literally the end game for them. It's
so
like,
instead she says, what if we just put bombs in the necks of known villains and we have them fight the fight for us, seeing as they're like the most expendable people. That's the Suicide Squad film. Because then instead of what they've done with the DCU, rather than having like the fourth film with characters that we've never seen before but kind of already are expected to know, these are characters that have appeared in the film before, such as Captain Boomerang was Flash's villain, Black Manta was Aquaman's villain, all that, and they're kind of then put in a film together where they have to like fight minions of Darkseid.
So maybe something like the Furies and Granny Goodness, probably.
Something like that, yeah. But then in the third Justice League, it kind of all collides. Like there's the remaining members of the Justice League were like out of the way. There's the Green Lantern Corps. There's
the Suicide
Squad, and then they kind of like build up to that. Eventually, like Superman beats most of them, and then Doomsday comes in and kills Superman. That's until the point where I got. I need to develop it further, but basically, it gets to that point where like Doomsday is running loose on Earth.
Yeah, and the Justice League is
and then just like Lex
now
Luthor
they have
probably,
a new problem.
Yeah, and then Lex Luthor will probably fling him into space or something, and then everyone thinks that Lex Luthor.
And then there'll be a Planet Doomsday arc, which will be just Planet Doomsday, not Thor Ragnarok.
But yeah, something like that. That's pretty much the point where I got.
So in my universe, moving on to the next, I have the 15-year plan, so it'd be sort of 3 movies per year, so one every 4 months roughly. And it would launch straight into a world's finest movie. And I kind of changed the idea originally from when we talked about it, because I liked a certain element that was coming up with yours. I thought I'd put it into mine. So it starts with Batman, Superman. They're already sort of into full swing in their careers. Superman's still fairly young. He's sort of 2-3 years. Batman maybe about 5-10 years. So he's been doing it for a while. They've also both been through a lot. So Batman's already been through the first 2 Robins and Batgirl. So he's on his own again. Superman is engaged to Lois Lane, and she knows that Superman is Clark Kent. So basically say, you know who these guys are? Well, let's just get into it, because you know who they are. And actually build up that they're both investigating current activity on Earth. Both of them have figured out something is going off and wrong. And they find out that Gordon Godfrey, who in the comic books is a minion of Darkseid, has been sort of turning the world against superheroes and metahumans and basically trying to bolster a negative support, essentially, and try and build up more negative power on Earth. And also the villain of the film would not just be Gordon Godfrey, but General Steppenwolf. So they'd be working in tangent together. You know, Gordon Godfrey is more of a face villain to take on Batman, and General Steppenwolf to take on Superman in more of a powerhouse function. And by the end of the film, Steppenwolf loses and Gordon Godfrey runs to Apocalypse. And the idea is basically they both once again find out at the very end, okay, Darkseid is here, he's coming, we need to prepare for it, and they decide to integrate I want to talk to you about the Justice League initiative now. Amanda Waller won't come in and say that. And the following films would be a Wonder Woman movie, Flash movie, Aquaman movie, the Hawks, which would be Hawkman and Hawkgirl, sorry, and Green Lantern Emerald Knights, which would be about the entire Green Lantern Corps. So it would also establish the Green Lantern Corps. Hal Jordan's already been around, Jon Stewart's already been around, Guy Gardner's been around. They've been around for a while. So none of these would be per se origins, maybe except for Aquaman, because I like the idea of a certain origin story for him that I thought would be really cool to do. The Hawks would probably have an origin, sort of the story would, because their origin begins thousands of years ago. So it would be kind of like flashbacks and have it be Cutter Hall already knows what he's doing and Shire Hall has no idea. So kind of how they've done it in CW. And then following that would be the Justice League film, which would be Justice League Invasion, which follows the idea of Darkseid being the main villain. It's the Justice League, they all come together. Superman and Batman basically individually have to go out and find each of the League members to talk to them to say, come and help us. So Batman contacts Wonder Woman, she agrees to help. He contacts the Flash. Flash is a little reluctant because, once again, in a similar tone with Justice League, like, I'm not a warrior, I don't fight invasions, it's not my thing. And Batman going, you need to do this because you're very powerful, we need your help. Superman goes to talk to the Hawks because he convinces Cutter to help, and Shire is a little more reluctant, but she agrees to ultimately. He goes to Aquaman, who doesn't want to help at first because he's like, no, this isn't my fight. My people need me at the moment. And after that, Atlantis is attacked. Similar in how Justice League it goes. However, have possibly the idea maybe Mirror is kidnapped and some of the Atlanteans as well to make more parademons. And at that point, it's kind of like, yeah, I need to go and fight with the Justice League. So he leaves his brother, who was the villain of the first Aquaman movie, Orm, in charge, basically saying, look, who goes on a bit of a redemption arc similar to Loki, and say, look, you stay here, you watch everything, so I'm going to go help these guys. And they all come together, and Green Lantern and the Flash meet each other, and ultimately the Flash talks at Green Lantern. They don't know each other. It's the first time they've met, but they kind of the first time they meet, they save people from a burning building, so they unite under the fact that they've both just been heroes. And Green Lantern's like, look, if there's an alien invasion, we need to do something. So he convinces Flash to help. So they all meet, in which point they'll meet Mr. Miracle. Once they go to Star Labs and meet Cyborg, but Cyborg doesn't play that much of a factor in the film. He's introduced, but he doesn't play that much of a role. Mr. Miracle does play a big role. So if you know who Mr. Miracle is, he's actually one of Darkseid's sons who got traded to New Genesis after a great war between the New Gods and the Apocalyptians. So he comes there to inform the Justice League, look, this is who Darkseid really is, this is what he's capable of. You guys are really screwed if you don't work together because he's almighty and all-powerful. And they informs them that he's after the anti-life equation, which will give him complete dominion over the universe. So at the very end of the film, in the big final fight, Darkseid beats Superman fairly easily, and then the League kind of has to fight Darkseid without Superman's help. Batman and Mr. Miracle have infiltrated this dark tower to try and repel Apocalypse, which is on its way to Earth with a huge invasion army. And also, Barda's working for the Fury. She's been brainwashed. Barda is Mr. Miracle's wife in the comics. Some of you, probably a lot of you know. And at the very end, Superman gets up, and basically everyone, including Barda, Batman, all help repel Darkseid. And in this event, Hawkman will die. Yes, there'll be stakes! Unlike, a certain cinematic universe, which has done very well now, but has had a rocky start, needless to say. And Ocean Master, Orm, will die, so get him out of the way. People think he'll be Loki, but no, he'll just die straight away.
Sure.
And then, after that event, also Mr. Miracle will be taken back to Apocalypse, will lead which into sort of a Mr. Miracle movie with perhaps Barda and Orion trying to find, or not a Mr. Miracle, but a New Gods movie where Barda and Orion try to get Mr. Miracle back from Darkseid, where he is now on Apocalypse after basically selflessly sacrificing himself to save Earth and everyone else. And once the League has beaten them, there'll be the whole ceremony and everything, and everyone will be like, oh, what are you guys going to call yourselves? And the Flash will be like, we'll be the Super 7, and they'll be like, no, that's a terrible name.
That always has to be there.
That always has to be there. And, I mean, we might as well just call ourselves the Revengers. No, I wouldn't go that far. I'd be tempted, but I wouldn't. And the after credits scene would be Superman and Lois Lane at the farm. They both also in this film have had their first kid, John, just like in the comics, and they're in bed sleeping, and a blue light appears, and the camera would pan from them on the bed to who the figure is, which would be Dr. Manhattan, and the big reveal will be that Dr. Manhattan is the villain of the whole cinematic universe. So throughout the universe, there'd be all these individual films which, while other heroes would cameo in and would appear in, there would be sort of maybe every 2 years there would be a big sort of Doomsday Clock build-up film. So there'd be a Pandora film, which was originally more for Justice League War in the comics, so reorientate for Doomsday Clock. There'd be a Booster Gold Rip Hunter film, which would be orientated for building up for Doomsday Clock. There'd be a Flash and Batman crossover movie, which would be about the Button, the comedian's Button, which would be once again build-up. The villain of that film would be Reverse Flash, just like in the comics.
Obviously.
And an Oz Effect, Superman Oz Effect film, which would be the last film just before Doomsday Clock. Doomsday Clock for me would be split into 3 parts. First part would be Doomsday Clock Part 1, Arrival of the Watchmen. So basically Doomsday Clock is building up for the big crossover between the DC Cinematic Universe and the Watchmen universe. And I wouldn't bother doing a Watchmen movie, I would just say people watch the Zack Snyder Watchmen movie. Well, it's not great, but I mean,
it exists
already, so there's no need for it. So the Watchmen come to the DC universe originally to save their own universe, which is basic, their own Earth, which is under nuclear attack, so they're looking for Dr. Manhattan, just like in the movie. And pretty much the first few issues of Doomsday Clock would be basically what Doomsday Clock Part 1 is, but Part 2 would be Doomsday Clock Part 2, Death of Superman, in which would also reveal that what Dr. Manhattan wanted to achieve was gain access to both the life and anti-life equation, which have both been stored in the Fortress of Solitude, which he can't gain access to, and he can't defeat he could defeat Superman, but he doesn't want to risk being killed, because Superman is probably the only being who currently can, because over the films, it would build up that Superman is becoming more powerful, until Death of Superman, which, yes, just as it describes, Superman would die at the very end, Doomsday would kill him, and, yeah, the following film, Doomsday Clock Part 3, which would follow the Justice League trying to cope with it, and also everyone kind of realizing that, the Watchmen finally get to meet the League. They don't get to meet the League until the third film, and basically say, look, Dr. Manhattan's here, he's coming, and this is what he's after, this is what he wants. Basically, Dr. Manhattan's whole plan is to rewrite the entire multiverse in his own image. So no one would be left, nothing would exist, it would be everything he wants it to be. And as for how they beat him, I have no clue, because it's fucking Dr. Manhattan, and I have no idea how you beat God. And that's who he is, so I need to wait till the end of Doomsday Clock, and I can probably figure out a way of doing it.
Probably, yeah.
But once they do, they would obviously win. Superman does not come back, I'll stress that. He stays dead. He dies in Doomsday Clock Part 2, and I'm keeping him dead to sort of build up, like, this is really important, because this really does mean that the heroes can lose, because he did. But once they win, and the end credits scene, which I did tell you, which I'm not proud of, but I think it'd be really fucking cool, and it would have everyone in the cinema going,
yeah, but which will never happen.
It would never happen, but if
impossible.
we could do it, if they could set aside their pride and do it, I'd be so fucking happy. Is in that in another universe, in another Earth, there'd be a different Superman and Batman. They're walking through the Watchtower, and they both enter a vault. The theme of the dialogue would be something like this, like, oh, what happened to the Spear of Destiny? And that Superman asks him, because he's just arrived, and Batman goes, I don't know. It just disappeared, and he goes, Superman says, who could break into our vaults? Batman replies with the obvious, no one could. They enter the vault, Wonder Woman's already there, they all gather around, but, Batman beforehand says, the strange thing is, though, it didn't disappear, it was replaced by something else. They arrive, they all look down, the camera pans down to the Cosmic Cube, aka the Tesseract, and it would be Marvel versus DC
Again,
in the following year. It would never happen. But could you imagine just everyone going, yes. But yeah, if it could happen, that's what I would do. If not, then, the end credit scene would there wouldn't be one probably, it would just end. But yeah.
Yeah, see, for me, like, eventually, if I were to, like, introduce, like, a comic book crossover, it would literally just be a throwaway joke.
Yeah.
Where it's like, at some point, like, a goon goes into a pub and goes like, I heard you can, do contracts for the right people, and he goes like, for the right price, and he goes like, well, I should let you know that my contract is very demanding. And he goes like, but I can do it because you know who I am. He goes like, I know who you are, and he goes, say my name. And he goes, Deathstroke, and he goes, say my goddamn name. And he goes, wait, and then a red and black suit comes in and goes, you're goddamn right.
I would just go with Heisenberg.
That's a throwaway joke I had.
But anyway.
But because it's not realizable, I didn't include it.
Yeah.
Well, also though, in my version, like when Superman dies, obviously he's gonna come back.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's kind of tough to think about like the characters that I wouldn't mind like at some point having die. Aquaman probably, because you know he can be easily changed for someone else.
Nobody likes Aquaman.
No, but it's more like because the thing is, I kind of want to keep the roster of the Justice League changing every now and again as well, and I feel like Aquaman is the most expendable out of them all.
I think oddly enough, Green Lantern could be, but for different Green Lanterns.
No, but that's the thing. I was thinking because the Justice League film, the third one, where the Green Lanterns do appear, I feel like there should be this point where Darkseid actually attacks Oa.
Yeah.
And only John Stewart survives.
Okay.
And all of the other Green Lanterns die, including the planet.
Wow.
So he only has like limited supply of power until they find out that willpower is like a pure source of, so he doesn't actually have to recharge all the time.
Oddly enough, I had a similar idea with my one where Dr. Manhattan in Doomsday Part 3 just goes to Oa and, snap of his fingers, but he just basically, he wipes out Oa